Hello, gentle travelers of the night. Welcome to another peaceful journey through our planet's hidden stories. If you are here, you have already begun to let go. The day is behind you now. Whatever burdens you carried, whatever weight pressed against your thoughts, leave them by the shoreline. For tonight, we walk together into the tide. This is your sanctuary. A quiet harbor where words drift like feathers on still water before we begin our long voyage. Let me whisper something gentle, something simple. This is a place for rest. If your eyes grow heavy as we journey, let them close. If my voice begins to dissolve into the distance, do not resist. You are safe to drift, to surrender to sleep. For this is not a hurried tale. It is not a sharp-edged lecture. It is a river, moving slow and deep, carrying us through history's half-forgotten. Through cities whose names are barely echoes, cities that once gleamed beneath the sun, and now sleep beneath the waves. But first, if this sanctuary brings you peace, if these words guide you softly into dreams, I invite you quietly, gently, to subscribe. Not for me, but for the continuation of this little ritual we share. And now, close your eyes if you wish. Feel the hush of the evening settle upon your skin like cool mist. Listen to the rhythm of your breath, in and out, like waves upon a distant shore. For tonight, our thoughts will follow the tides. We will drift across centuries and seas, two places swallowed by water, not in violence, not in thunder, but with the slow inevitability of time, the kind that humbles kings and wears mountains into sand. Picture them if you can. Silent avenues paved with coral, columns that once reached for the heavens, now bowing to the patient weight of the ocean. Doorways opening not to courtyards, but to an endless blue, where markets once thrummed with the pulse of life, now only fish weave through the broken geometry of walls. And yet these were not always ruins. There was laughter here once. There were voices calling out in the heat of the day, merchants bartering for spices, children chasing shadows between sunlit stones. There were prayers whispered to gods whose names have long since dissolved in the salt, and now only currents answer them. Only the sea remembers. Perhaps you wonder, as I do, how did they fall? Is it sudden, like a knife drawn in the dark? Or slow, like the dimming of a candle? Is it wrath, a punishment from the divine? Or was it the simple, merciless arithmetic of nature and time? That is the story we shall unfold together, not in haste, but in soft ripples, each thought flowing into the next. For the ocean is not a place of sharp edges. It is round, eternal, circling back upon itself like the moon upon the tide. So our story too will move in circles, beginning here in silence, drifting outward to distant centuries and returning at last to the stillness from which we came. So breathe with me once more. Let the ocean rise and fall within you. Feel the hush of it filling the hollow spaces of your thoughts. And when you are ready, step with me beyond the edge of the familiar, into a world that is both lost and everlasting. For everything the sea takes, it keeps, and everything it keeps becomes a secret. Tonight we listen for those secrets, whispered through silt and stone. The ocean is an old storyteller. It's older than the mountains, older than the forests, older than the bones of the earth. Itself, it speaks, but never in haste. Its language is one of tides and currents, of slow erosion, of silence that lasts longer than empires. To understand why cities vanish beneath its depths, we must first learn to hear that language. Why does the sea rise? The simplest answer is this: it breathes. The ocean expands when the world warms, and it swells with the water of melting ice. But science, though elegant, can be cold, so let us dress it in poetry. The sea rises because the earth exhales heat, and the ocean answers. The sea rises because the glaciers, those white keepers of memory, grow weary and return to the waters that birthed them. But this story is older than carbon and coal. Long before we built towers of steel and glass, long before engines roared, or smokestacks crowned the horizon, the ocean claimed and relinquished the land in endless cycles. Continents drifted, Shorelines danced forward and back like tide lines in the sand. Civilizations bloomed in the pauses between those steps, believing the earth beneath them was still. It was not. It never was. Perhaps you have seen a map of the world, the familiar curve of coastlines, the blue and the green. But that map is only a photograph of a single moment. Beneath the surface, continents lie in fragments, like a puzzle rearranged by unseen hands. There were ages when deserts lay where oceans are now, and ages when the sea reached far inland, turning valleys into inland seas. And within those shifting borders, humanity built its fragile kingdoms. We have always loved the edge of water. Rivers cradled the first cities. Deltas bloomed with grain. Harbors opened their arms to trade, to salt and silk and spice. The sea was a giver of life, of wealth, of stories. But it was never ours to command. The tide is patient. It waits, and when the balance tilts, it moves not in anger, but with inevitability. So let us walk in thought to those edges where the tide reclaimed its ancient bed. 2 streets now silent beneath a ceiling of blue. 2 marketplaces where coins lie scattered like shells. 2 temples where the gods sleep in coral. Crowns, close your eyes, can you hear it? The hush of waves folding upon the shore. Let it blur the edges of your thoughts as we step deeper into this story. Imagine the first city, the one that will guide our journey. It is dusk, and the light falls like liquid gold across stone walls. The air is warm, fragrant with salt and incense. People move through narrow streets, their voices low, carrying the weight of rituals older than history. They do not know that the sea is watching. They do not know that centuries from now, their homes will become reefs, their statues mantled in weed. They believe the world is still, but the ocean is already moving. Not in waves, but in whispers. The ground sinks grain by grain, almost imperceptibly. Far away, an ice field loosens its grip. A river carves a deeper bed. These small motions will meet like conspirators in the dark, and when they do, the streets will drown not in a day, not in a year, but in the slow tidal rhythm of centuries. This is how cities did not with the violence of fire, but with the embrace of water. A soft erasure. The sea does not break. It absorbs. And when it has finished its work, it leaves no ruins visible to the sun, only blue silence. We will visit these places one by one. Pavlopetri, where Greece sleeps in shallow tides. Heracleion, once proud at the mouth of the Nile, now only a dream beneath the Mediterranean. Dorka, shimmering in the Arabian Sea, the ghostly terraces of Yonaguni, the shattered sprawl of Port, Royal, and others, nameless, where no diver has yet traced the outlines of a vanished street. We will linger with them, not as hurried tourists, but as listeners. We will let the silence of their waters speak through us. When their voices fade, we will look forward to the cities that still breathe air today, but may yet learn the weight of water. Venice, Jakarta, Miami, names that sound fragile now, like shells in the tide. And when all our wanderings are done, we will return full circle to this still place, its quiet shore of thought. The night is deepening now, and the rhythm of the tide moves through your breath. Let it lull you, let it carry you further from the noise of the waking world. You are not required to remember every word of this journey. The ocean keeps the memory for us. You may drift, you may dream. The story will go on without you, soft and unbroken like the sea. For now, let us begin. The tide does not rush. It waits. It has always waited.
How longer than mountains have stood.
Longer than rivers have carved their names across the skin of the earth, the ocean knows no hurry, for it speaks in centuries. It speaks in the language of patience, but even patience has motion. And tonight, we will follow that motion, not as scholars in a lecture hall, but as dreamers walking through the folds of time, tracing the slow breath of the sea. For the ocean breathes, though not as you or I do. Its inhalation and exhalation span ages, and when it draws in breath, coastlines vanish. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the edge of the world as it was when your ancestors first opened their eyes to the dawn. The seas lay calm, though never still. Their boundaries were drawn. in fragile lines upon the sand lines that whispered of impermanence even as they seemed eternal. But beneath those waters, forces stirred. The great engines of the planet, the heat of the sun, the pull of the moon, the tilt of the earth worked their quiet calculus, and the oceans listened. Why does the sea rise? The simplest voice of science will tell you this. Heat expands water. When the air warms, so too does the ocean. Every droplet stretches infinitesimally, but when multiplied by trillions upon trillions, its stretching becomes a tide that cannot be undone. And then there is the ice, the frozen memory of the world, locked in the white silence of glaciers. They too answer the warmth. They loosen, fracture, dissolve, and their ancient waters return to the sea. It sounds so measured, so technical, doesn't it? Thermal expansion, glacial melt, words that live in textbooks, crisp and bloodless. But listen deeper, and you will hear the poetry in their truth. The sea rises because the earth exhales heat, and the ocean answers. The sea rises because the white keepers of the poles, the solemn guardians of millennia, have grown weary and let go. They melt not in rage, but in resignation, returning to the body from which they were born. And yet, this is not the first time. No, the ocean has done this dance before, long before coal smudged the skies, long before iron sang in the mouths of engines. The seas have swelled and shrunk in the rhythm of ages. For the earth is never still. It tilts. It wobbles. It shudders with the breath of volcanoes. Ice comes and goes like the slow blinking of an eye. In the ages of cold, the oceans retreat, bearing the bones of the continents. In the ages of warmth, they surge forward, swallowing valleys, plains, and all the fragile wonders built upon them. Our cities, our shining empires of glass and stone, are brief flickers against that tide. We plant them where rivers braid their silver threads, where deltas bloom like green jewels, where harbors yawn open to the salt road of trade. We build on the edge because the edge is rich, and we forget that the edge is alive. But the ocean never forgets. It remembers every inch it once held. It waits for the balance to tilt, for warmth to loosen the locks, for the ice to weep back into its cradle. And when that moment comes, it moves not with fury, but with inevitability. Now, let us linger for a while with this thought. The tide is not only water, it is time made visible. Each wave is an echo of the moon's pull, a silent conversation between earth and sky, and that conversation has been going on for as long as oceans have wrapped this planet in blue. Imagine the moon, pale and patient, drawing the seas toward her with invisible fingers. Every day, twice a day, she leans close, and the waters rise in answer. Then she withdraws, and the waters fall. This is the breathing of the ocean, not the long inhale of centuries, but the daily pulse, the soft sigh of tides. Stand with me. On a shoreline in your mind, feel the sand cooling beneath your feet as evening falls. Listen, the hush of water folding upon itself, again and again, like a lullaby older than speech. That rhythm, that endless advance and retreat, is the heartbeat of the world. It will go on long after we are gone, and yet within that rhythm hides a slower music, one we cannot hear in a single lifetime. It is the rise that never fully falls, the tide that creeps higher with each century. It does not roar, it does not rush. It moves like a thought drifting through sleep, soft, relentless, certain. This is the slow drowning of time, not the rage of storms, not the sudden violence of a wave tearing at the shore, but the quiet persistence of water reclaiming its own. It begins with whispers, a grain of sand here, a stone loosened there, the salt fingers of the tide reaching a little farther inland each year. At first no one notices. Then one day, the sea is where it was not before. A garden gone, a road devoured, a house standing in a salt marsh, like a memory refusing to let go. And still, we do not see the whole of it, because our eyes are tuned to the short measure of days, not the long breath of oceans. But the ocean does not measure in days, it measures in depths. Perhaps you wonder, as you lie there listening, what this means for the cities we are about to visit. Those that sleep beneath the waves were not taken in storms alone, though some, where most were lost to the slow, inevitable drowning, the patient work of water and time. They were built in confidence, in faith that the earth beneath them was steadfast, and for a while it was. Generations lived and died without ever dreaming that the sea would come for them, and then one day it did. First a flood, then another, then a harbor too deep for its own ships, then walls leaning, streets slick with salt, and finally silence. The roof slipped under, the columns bowed, the statues gazed upward through a green, glassy sky. And life moved inland, forgetting. The ocean does not forget. It holds their names like pearls in the dark. Now let us listen to that other rhythm. One beneath the tides, the one that hums through the planet's bones. For the ocean's rise is not only about water, it is about the earth itself, restless in its slumber. The crust shifts. Continents breathe. The sea floor heaves upward in one place and sinks in another. Even as the waters climb, the land bows or lifts in answer. Some coasts drown not because the sea has grown, but because the earth has knelt beneath its weight. This, too, is part of the great pattern, the dance of stone and water, gravity and time. We cannot command it. We cannot bargain with it. We can only listen and wonder and remember that we are small. And so, as you drift deeper into this story, let these thoughts settle around you like silt in still water. The sea is not cruel. It is not kind. It simply is. It moves to the music of forces older than life, and in that music our cities are brief. Bright notes, soon to fade. Soon we will begin our journey to those lost places. But for now, rest in this understanding that the ocean is breathing and its breath shapes the world. It has always done so. It always will. Let the hush of that truth carry you a little closer to sleep. For the night is deep and the tide is rising slowly, silently. Like time itself, there is a silence beneath the waves that feels older than time. Not an empty silence, not the hollow absence of sound, but a full and living stillness, the kind you feel in a cathedral at dusk, where dust turns gold in the last light and voices fall into whispers. That is the silence of the sea, and in that silence, entire cities sleep. Tonight, we will drift down into that silence, through layers of salt and memory, to touch the bones of the first lost shores. It's not in haste. There is no need for haste. The ocean does not hurry, and neither. Shall we let us begin? Where the Aegean sighs against the rocks of Greece? Where the water gleams like molten sapphire under the sun? Here, beneath the gentle shimmer of waves, lies a city older than all the maps in your mind. Petri. Close your eyes, and let me paint it for you. The water is clear as though spun from glass, and the seabed below stretches like a forgotten parchment inscribed with lines and patterns. Look closer. Those are not random shapes. They are streets laid out by hands that once believed in permanence. Here is a courtyard, wide and open to the sky that no longer shines upon it. There the foundations of houses, their walls, traced faintly in stone. Channels run like veins between them, carved to guide water, to carry life. There are rooms where children slept, floors where fire once warmed at the winter dark. And now, only seagrass curls where hearths once glowed. Petri is no myth. It is not a rumor whispered in taverns. It is as real as the tide above it, a city more than 5,000 years old, older than Homer's song, older than the Parthenon's first dream of marble, and yet it lies unseen by the waking world, cradled in the arms of the sea. How did it come to this? Why does Petri, once proud upon the edge of the Peloponnese, sleep beneath the waves? The story begins with the quiet cruelty of change the shifting earth, the sigh of tectonic plates, the long murmur of time.
Ow.
The land trembled. The sea, patient but persistent, pressed inward. Storms came like omens, tearing at the fragile threads. Between land and water, year after year, century after century, the line moved, until one day the tide stepped where no tide had stepped before, and Pavlopetri drowned, but not in rage. There was no single night of thunder, no sudden howling. End. No, it was a softer tragedy, a slow erosion of certainty. A market stall abandoned after a flood, a temple door swollen with salt, a street left empty when the water lingered too long. Then silence. The people moved inland, carrying what they could, leaving behind what they could not, and the sea closed its hand. Yet even in drowning, Pavlopetri did not vanish. The ocean, in its strange mercy, preserved the bones of its body. Millennia later, divers would trace its streets with gloved fingers, marveling at its precision. Archaeologists would kneel upon its thresholds, their bubbles rising like prayers, and whisper its name into the blue. But for the city itself, there is no time. It sleeps, wrapped in the green veils of the tide. And if you truly listen, you can almost hear it dreaming. Now, let us leave Greece behind. Let us drift south, across the wind-dark Mediterranean, to the mouth of a river that has been called the giver of life, the keeper of empires, the Nile. For at its delta, under a green haze of water and silt, lies another city, older still in its bones and prouder in its fall. Its name is Heracleion. Imagine, if you will, the Nile fanning into 1,000 silver channels, spilling into the embrace of the Mediterranean. Once, upon this threshold between river and sea, rose a city of splendor and shadow, Heracleion, the gate of the gods. Its harbors groaned with ships, cedar from Lebanon, gold from Nubia, amphorae heavy with wine and oil. Here, traders' cries mingled with the chanting of priests. Here offerings smoked before statues that glared with eyes of stone and lapis. Here processions wound like living rivers through streets paved with the sweat of slaves and the dust of empire. And now, nothing. Nothing but water, folding upon itself in green silence. Nothing but statues lying on their sides, mantled in weed. Columns tilting like drunks in the silt. Coins scattered like stars across the seabed, their faces dulled by salt and time. Heracleion fell not in an instant, but in a trembling that grew like a fever. The earth beneath it was a lyre, soft with sediment, treacherous as sand. When the tremors came, they cracked its foundations like brittle bone. Temples sagged. Walls leaned. Then the water entered, hissing, patient, unstoppable. And in time, the city slipped under the skin of the sea. When divers found it in 2000, Heracleion was a ghost in green twilight. Imagine that first sight. Colossal statues, half buried in silt, their faces calm as if mocking the centuries. Stones carved with hieroglyphs, speaking in a language no fish could read. Jars, amulets, offerings all scattered like the remnants of a dream. What prayers did they whisper, those last citizens, as the water closed in? Did they curse their gods or cling to them? Did they think the flood a punishment or a test? We will never know. For now, Heracleion answers only to the tide. Its streets are rivers. Its temples echo with the hum of currents. And where priests once lit fires to Ra, only the sun sends shafts of light through green water, breaking like glass upon the stones. And so, 2 cities sleep, one Greek, one Egyptian. 2 names almost lost, 2 stories almost gone. Of Lepetri, still and bright beneath the Aegean, Heracleion, vast and solemn in the Nile's embrace. They do not speak to us in words. They speak in silence, in shadows, in the slow, eternal dance of silt and sea. Close your eyes and think of them now. Streets veiled in sunlight filtered through water. Statues wearing crowns of coral. Markets echoing only with the flicker of fish. Entire worlds adrift in the blue. And remember this, they were not the first, or will they be the last? Breathe. With me, slowly now, in and out. Let the stillness settle like dust upon the deep floors of memory. For we are about to walk in thought through a city that no longer stands, yet still holds its shape in the salt embrace of the Mediterranean. A city once called Sheletli, I use, though perhaps the sadness in that name though perhaps the sadness is ours, not its own. For Heracleion did not choose to vanish. It did not whisper for oblivion, stood once in sunlight, strong and proud at the mouth of the Nile, wearing crowns of stone and gold. It was the gate of gods, the sentinel between river and sea, a city that guarded the riches of Egypt and welcomed the restless tides of the Mediterranean world. But tonight, as the tide hums softly in your ears and the hush of the sea folds around your thoughts, I want you to see it as it was, not broken, not drowned, but whole and breathing, steeped in incense and sunlight. Close your eyes and let us walk together through its streets. It is dawn, and the first light spills across the delta like molten copper. The river glows with fire, and the air is heavy with the scent of wet earth, salt, and lotus. From the harbor comes the groan of ship-cedar masts from Phoenicia, their sails furled like folded wings. Men call out to one another in a chorus of tongues: Egyptian, Greek, Phoenician, Nubian. The harbor is the heart of Heracleion, beating with the pulse of trade. Step closer. Hear the clatter of amphorae being rolled across stone. Smell the sharp temps of olives, the sweet musk of wine, the spice that rides the breeze from distant lands. The water beyond the docks shimmers like hammered bronze, and beyond it, the horizon glows pale with promise. Now turn. City rises. Behind you, like a dream of order, avenues lined with limestone walls, courts open to the sky, temples that rear like mountains of marble and sandstone, columns crowned with lotus bloom in carved relief, gates massive as eternity. At their base, priests move like shadows, their linen robes whispering in the wind. They carry offerings in baskets of reed bread and figs in jars of honey.
Out there.
Voices rise and chant, a deep, resonant murmur that coils upward like smoke toward the gods. For this is not a city only of trade, but of divinity. Heracleion belongs to the gods before it belongs to any king. The river's lifeblood flows through its veins. Where river meets sea, the gods themselves are said to walk unseen. Do you feel that hush, that weight upon the air? It is the weight of stories. For Heracleion was built not only on stone, but on myth. Its very name is a whisper of legend, memory of Heracles, the hero who walked the earth when it was young. The Greeks believed that Heracles himself once passed through this threshold between the river and the open sea, and in his honor, the city bore his name. But the Egyptians knew another truth, older and deeper. They called this place Thaunis, and to them it was holy ground, the dwelling of Neith, the weaver of the cosmos, the mother of the sun. Here, where river dissolved into salt, the two worlds touched, the fertile soil of life and the infinite water of chaos. To hold this balance was to hold the world together. In the heart of the city rose the temple of Ammon, lord of hidden things. Its pylons loomed like twin mountains. Its courts were vast, floored with stone, cool as moonlight. Within its shadowed halls, priests bent low, chanting in voices trained to stir the very air into holiness. And when the king himself came to Heracleion, as each king must, to be crowned, he bowed before Amen and took the blessing of the waters. For here in this liminal city, the pharaoh was not merely a ruler of men, but a thread between earth and eternity. Can you see it? The torchlight flickering against painted walls, the scent of myrrh and blue lotus thick upon the air, the drums deep as the heart of the earth, and through the gates, the Nile flowing in stately silence, bearing ships heavy with offerings for the god. This was Heracleion, not a mere city, but a hinge between worlds. A stage upon which myth and power entwined like vines around a pillar. But even as its temples rang with hymns and its harbors thrummed with trade, the earth beneath Heracleion was restless. For the delta, beautiful as it was no firm foundation. It was a hand of silt, fragile, shifting with every breath of the river. And beneath that silt, the ground trembled with faults unseen. Perhaps there were omens. Perhaps a priest lifted his eyes one morning and saw the river too high, too dark with silt. Perhaps cracks appeared in the flagstones of the temple, hair-lined fissures whispering of doom. Or perhaps the city danced too well to the music of its own grandeur and heard nothing. Then came the tremor. Not a roar, not at first, only a shiver, running like a serpent through the bones of the earth. Walls quivered, amphorae toppled. Priests gripped their altars. And then, as if the ground had drawn a breath and let it go, the earth sank. Not all at once, not in a single gasp, but in long, sighing motions, the way a reed bends beneath the wind. The river surged inward. The sea rose up to meet it. And the waters came not in a single wave, but in a slow, inexorable seep, threading through streets, pooling in courtyards, licking at thresholds. Houses darkened with damp, gardens drowned. The harbors swelled beyond its bounds, and ships that once rode, proud at anchor, floated over the very stones of the quay, and still the city clung to life. Still the priests sang, still the markets opened their palms to the sun. For who can believe that a city blessed by gods could fall? But the tremors returned, and with them the floods. Year upon year, the water crept higher, until one day Heracleion was no more a city, but a reflection, a ghost shimmering upon the surface of the tide, and then nothing. Only the glint of sunlight on water, only the sigh of waves folding upon themselves again and again, as though erasing the last syllable of a name. Now, Heracleion sleeps in green twilight. Its gates are mantled in weed, its temples tilt like drunkards in the silt. Statues that once loomed in majesty now lie upon their sides, their eyes blank, their lips sealed against the weight of centuries. Columns stand like broken teeth. The harbor stones are buried beneath centuries of sand, yet the city endures. The sea, in its strange and solemn mercy, has preserved it, cradled it in salt and shadow, hidden it from plunder and time. When divers first slipped into its silence in the year 2000, they found wonders. Colossal statues of gods and kings, serene as though carved yesterday. Golden amulets that winked like captured sunlight. Jars still fat with silt but whole. Coins scattered like a fallen constellation across the floor of the deep. Imagine it. The moment the diver's torch swept across a stone face that had not seen light in 13 centuries, the sand lifted in lazy spirals. The fish scattered like startled birds. And there, in the hush of green water, the city spoke again, in words, but in presence. In the mute eloquence of survival. Close your eyes now. Picture it as I leave you here, in thought, wandering through the drowned colonnades. Feel the velvet drag of water against your skin. Hear the creak of your own breath in the helmet, the distant boom of your heart. See the statues looming out, of darkness, draped in weeds like funeral cloth. And remember, this was once a city of sun and song, of gods in gold, of voices lifted to eternity. And now it is a whisper, a hush, a dream beneath the sea. Heracleion is gone, not forgotten, not while the ocean remembers. In the hush between waves, there are streets that dream, streets without footsteps, courtyards without laughter, roofs open to the drifting sky of green water. These are the streets of Pavlopetri, and tonight we walk among them not with feet, but with thought, with breath slowed to the rhythm of the tide. Let the night deepen around you. Let the sound of the ocean hum in your ears, not loud, not urgent, but soft, like a heartbeat heard from far away. For we are going back, back beyond the edges of history, back 5,000 years, to a time when these drowned foundations stood. Proud in sunlight and song, the Aegean is calm this morning. Its surface glows like liquid silver, broken only by the prow of a boat gliding across it. On the shore, olive trees stoop in the wind, their leaves flashing pale as coins, and beyond them hills roll like the backs of sleeping gods. Here, on this quiet edge of land, the first houses rise stone walls low and square, their roofs flat, their courtyards open to the blue vault of sky. Smoke curls from hearths. The scent of baking barley drifts through the air. Laugh, somewhere beyond the walls, chasing one another along the dust-bright streets. This is Pavlopetria, name that in our tongue means little more than Paul's stone, but once, long ago, meant life. It is a city without kings, without palaces, Or pyramids, a humble city, but a clever one. Its streets are laid in careful lines, meeting at right angles like the threads of a loom. Water runs through channels carved by patient hands. Pots stand in sunlit courts, their mouths sealed with clay against the flies. And all around the sea breathes softly, its salt fingers reaching for the shore. The people here know the sea as friend and giver. It brings fish to their nets, dye for their cloth, shells for their shrines. It carries their boats to islands green with pine, to harbors loud with trade. It brings strangers to merchants from Crete, with jars of wine and oil. Men from Kythera, with obsidian sharp as truth. Pavlopetri listens, learns, grows richer with each tide. And in the evenings, when the work is done and the sky turns the color of crushed figs, they gather in the courtyards to sing. Lyres hum, voices rise, weaving tales of gods who walk the earth in the shapes of men, of heroes who wrestle with the sea and live. This is a city at peace with the water. How could it not be? The sea is life, the sea is beauty, the sea is eternity. They do not know what we know, that eternity has two faces. And one is hunger. Perhaps the warning came in whispers. Perhaps a fisherman, pulling in his nets, saw the tide climb higher than his father had ever seen. Perhaps the earth shivered underfoot on a day without wind. Perhaps storms came harder, hurling waves against the shore as if in anger. But no warning could have told them how the story would end. For this was no sudden wrath, no monstrous wave devouring all in a single night. It was a slow drowning, the kind that moves like a shadow, inch by inch, until it is everywhere. The earth beneath Pavlopetri was not as steadfast as it seemed. It sighed under the weight of time, sinking grain by grain, and the sea, patient as fate, crept inward. A flood, one year, another the next. Streets slick with salt. Walls crumbling where no walls had crumbled before. Gardens turned to marsh. Still they clung to their homes. Still they sang to their gods, prayed for the balance to hold. Al-da-da-da. But the balance was already broken. And so the day came when Pavlopetri lay silent, its hearths cold, its doors unbarred. People were gone, carrying what they could, leaving behind what they could not. And the tide closed its hands. Now, 5,000 years later, the sea holds Pavlopetri in its blue embrace. The roofs are gone, but the bones remain, the walls traced faint and pale upon the seabed, like veins beneath translucent skin. Streets still run where they once ran, neat and narrow, the geometry of human hope etched forever in silt, swim lower. Here is a house, its threshold still intact, its rooms opening one into another. Here is a courtyard where figs once ripened in the sun, now roofed by water rippling like glass. Here is a jar, its mouth broken, its belly full of sand. No murals, no statues, no treasures wrought in gold. Pavlopetri was too humble for such vanities. Its wealth was life itself, the rhythm of days, the song of seasons, the laughter of children. In the dusk, all that is gone now. All that remains is silence. And yet, in that silence, there is a strange grace. The sea has made a garden of the city. Seagrass curls through doorways. Fish flicker where looms once stood. Starfish cling to walls as if holding them upright. The tide moves softly over all, a veil drawn by the slow hand of eternity. When divers first traced these streets in 1967, they moved like ghosts through a ghost city. Their bubbles spiraled upward like prayers. Their hands brushed stone worn smooth by centuries of water. And in that moment, Pavlopetri returned not to life but to memory, to story, to the fragile permanence of words. Close your eyes now, and walk with me down those vanished streets. Feel the sand cool beneath your feet, the sunlight broken by waves into trembling coins of gold. Step through a doorway draped in green weed. Pause in a room where shadows of columns lean upon the floor. Do you hear it? Not the hum of the sea, but something softer, a whisper of lives long gone. The clatter of pots, the murmur of voices, the thrum of a lyre under a sky that no longer arches overhead. These are echoes, and they will not fade, not while the sea keeps its secrets and we keep our dreams. For Pavlopetri is gone, but not lost. Not while the ocean remembers. The ocean has always been more than water. It is a library, a graveyard, a cradle of forgotten things. Beneath its breathing skin lie the dreams of continents, the bones of empires, the whispers of gods who no longer answer. Tonight, let us slip deeper into that twilight realm, not to the familiar shores of Greece or the sunlit deltas of Egypt, farther east, where the tides kiss lands steeped in myth. Here, the ghosts were other names. Dorka, Yanaguni, 2 syllables each, soft as a sigh. They are not cities you will find on any modern map, though once they lived bright, proud, defiant against the restless blue. One in the warm arms of the Arabian Sea, its stones bathed in saffron dawns and the fragrance of incense.
Ow.
The other, crouched at the edge of Japan, where the Pacific heaves like a sleeping giant, its depths cold and infinite. Close your eyes. Feel the pull of the tide in your breath. Slow, even, and out. With each exhale, let the surface world drift away. We are going down now, down through centuries, down through stories, until time itself unravels like a silken thread. They say it was built for a god. Not a god of distant, silent heavens, but one who walked among men, his laughter ringing through. The streets like temple bells, Krishna cowherd, and king, lover, and warrior. The blue-skinned lord of destiny. In the songs of the Mahabharata, Dorka gleams like a jewel upon the sea. Its walls shine with gold, its towers with silver, its streets with gems that catch the sun like liquid fire. The air hums with music and the scent of sandalwood. In its palaces dwell princes and queens whose beauty bends the will of kingdoms, and at its heart, Krishna himself, playing his flute, a melody so sweet that even the ocean pauses to listen. But the ocean is not only a listener, it is a taker too. And though the poets spoke of Dwarka's splendor, they also spoke of its fate, that when Krishna left the world, the city he loved would fall, and the sea would claim what the earth could not hold. Was it punishment? Was it prophecy? Or was it only the slow hunger of nature, the law that spares nothing, not even the abodes of gods? The texts tell us the end came like a storm breaking upon a dream. Walls trembling, waves surging higher and higher, swallowing streets, uprooting trees. Temples toppled like tired giants. Markets drowned in foam. People fled, clutching their gods, their children, their lives. And behind them, Dorka sank. Its lights winking out one by one like stars before dawn. For centuries, Dorka was only a word, a myth, a line in an ancient song. Until the divers came. Until the 20th century, when whispers of stone beneath the sea became certainties. Off the coast of Gujarat, they found it not in the blaze of gold the poets promised, but in silence and silt. Pillars half buried, walls tracing ghostly grids upon the seabed. Steps worn smooth by feet that have not walked them in 5,000 years. Even now, fish drift through its corridors like priests in eternal prayer. Corals bloom on what were once thresholds. The sea has no haste. It reshapes what it takes, turning ruin into reef, memory into myth once more. If you really listen, you may still hear the faint sigh of Krishna's flute, lost somewhere in the fathoms, carried on currents that know no end. From Dwarkas, warm waters, we drift north to where the sea turns cold and deep. The Ryukyu Islands rise from the Pacific like the spines of an ancient dragon. Their cliffs clawed by storms, their forests murmuring with unseen life. At the edge of this chain lies Yanaguna quiet, wind-scoured, staring into a horizon that hides no mercy. Here divers speak of a shape that should not exist, a staircase descending into darkness, terraces wide as plazas, walls cut with a precision too sharp for chance. They call it the Yanaguni Monument, though monument to what? No one can say. Swim closer. The water chills your bones. Shadows gather like old secrets. And then it looms before you, a vast geometry of stone, its lines crisp, Its face is sheer, as though some giant hand carved it in a single breath. Steps drop in solemn procession, leading nowhere. Platforms spread like abandoned stages. Pillars thrust upward, only to vanish into gloom. Is it a city? A temple? A tomb? Or is it nothing but nature's just a reef broken by fault lines, chiseled by currents until it wears the mask of design? Scientists argue still. Some say 10,000 years of wind and wave could sculpt such order from chaos. Others swear. No tide, no tremor, no blind hand of time could shape stone so square, so deliberate, and so the questions coil like eels in the dark. Was Yanaguni the work of a people so old their names have turned to dust? Did they worship here, kneeling on terraces where now only sea fans sway? Did they climb those steps with offerings in their hands, never dreaming that one day those same steps would lead only to silence? Whatever truth lies buried here, it sleeps well. The ocean keeps its confidences. Fish wheel through corridors where priests may have chanted. Sharks glide past doorways that open only on eternity. The Pacific hums its slow, endless hymn older than temples, older than dreams. Dota, Ganaguni. Two cities, one born in myth, the other in mystery. One whose story was written in verse as bright as gold, the other whose story is not written at all. And yet both lie now beneath the same inexorable blue, their voices stilled, their names murmured only in the bubbles of divers and the hush of tides. Perhaps they are not gone. Perhaps no city ever truly dies, so long as someone remembers, so long as someone whispers its name to the waves. Tonight we have done that. Tonight Dorka breathes again in the saffron glow of its imagined dawn. Tonight Yanaguni rises once more from the dark, its terraces sharp against the shadow deep. But now let them sleep. Let the sea close its fingers gently around their stones. We have seen enough for one night, enough to remind us that nothing holds forever, not walls, not kings, not even the cities of gods. All things return in time to the ocean and the ocean. The ocean keeps them all. The Atlantic stretches like an unbroken hymn, an endless pulse of blue stitched with white threads of foam. It has been called a bridge, a barrier, a graveyard of ships, a mirror for the stars. It is a restless ocean, whispering through centuries, carrying both the breath of life and the sigh of loss. Tonight, we'll wander its depths softly, slowly as though we were stepping into a cathedral whose doors are carved from waves, whose pillars are shafts of light tumbling down from the sun. For in these waters lie secrets older than any empire. Secrets of kingdoms that thrived and fell. Secrets of cities that now lie silent beneath the green gloom. Let us begin with a name that has haunted dreams for more than 2,000 years. It's a name that is less a city than a promise. A word that tastes of mystery and salt, echoing like distant thunder across the tide, Atlantis. If you listen carefully, if you press your ear to the hollow shell of history, you will hear it. The faint murmur of Plato's voice, telling a story not for the credulous but for the wise. In his dialogues, he speaks of a place beyond the pillars of Heracleion, beyond the narrow throat of the Mediterranean, a great island kingdom, rich and radiant, girdled by rings of water and walls, a realm of abundance where gardens bloomed like jewels, where fountains leaped in the sun, where the air itself seemed to hum with harmony. Atlantis, he called it. The island that rose like a song and fell like a stone. He told us it was no fable, but a memory, that 9,000 years before his time, Atlantis waged war upon the old world and for its pride was struck down by the gods, one day of fury. One night of storm and the island was gone, swallowed by the sea as a torch is quenched by rain. But was it truth or allegory? Parable dressed in the robes of geography? The centuries have turned that question like a pebble in the surf. Scholars argue. Seekers search. They peer into sonar screens and sift the silt of the Atlantic floor, chasing shadows of walls, of roads, of columns broken like teeth. They dream of marble palaces buried in blue, of harbors carved in perfect circles, of an empire that drowned in its own hubris. Perhaps they dream in vain, or perhaps they dream what the ocean remembers. For even now, The sea does not speak, keeps its counsel deep and dark. While the wind above scatters the questions like gulls over a gray horizon, still imagine it with me, not as a ruin, but as it was alive, luminous, before the wave. Gardens, terraced like green flames, bridges arching like frozen rainbows, streets paved with orichalcum, a metal bright as dawn, the air full of the salt-sweet scent of blossoms, the hum of bees, the laughter of children running through call-and-ends, and then silence of peace, but the silence of undoing. Clouds boiling black, the sea lifting like a beast, unchained. A roar that drowns the cries of men, the prayers of queens, the very music of the earth. And then nothing. Only water, green and unbroken, folding itself over a name that would not die. Atlantis. A city that is not a city. A myth that is not a myth. A question that has not found its answer. Perhaps tonight it does not need one. For we are not here to solve, but to dream. And dreams are not bound by maps. If Atlantis is a ghost of perfection, Port Royal was its. Opposite a city, not of gods, but of men, raw and wild and burning with appetite. 17 miles from Kingston, Jamaica, there lies a tongue of land that once held the most. Notorious harbor in the New World. The year was 1655 when the English seized it from Spain. And soon the ships came sleek as sharks, bristling with cannon, their sails fat with the breath of fortune. With them came the men, sailors, soldiers, smugglers, and those who hunted Spanish gold under the black flag of piracy. Port Royal was their nest. Their den of roaring fires and roaring laughter, city drunk on sugar and silver, on rum and blood. They called it the wickedest city on earth, and perhaps they were right. Its taverns spilled over with coin and sign. Its brothels glowed like lanterns in the dark. Its streets were slick with excess, with greed, with a fever that could not last, and it did not. June 7th, 1692, a day that dawned bright as any other. Its air thick with heat and spice, the harbor choked with ships heavy with plunder. And then, without warning, the ground shuddered. The earth heaved like a wounded beast. Walls cracked like glass. Bells swung wild in their towers. In seconds, the streets split open, yawning like mouths, swallowing houses whole. The sea rushed. In waves curled like claws, dragging men and women screaming into the green. Taverns toppled into froth. The proud spires sank like candles in rain. When it was done, when the quake had spent its fury and the sea had stilled Port Royal was no city, but a wound upon the water, half of it gone to the depths, the rest broken and bleeding in the sun. Today, divers find it there, 40 feet, down a drowned echo of its own laughter. Doorways fringed with coral, cannons furred with weed, clay pipes resting where hands dropped them 3 centuries ago. In the silted hush of its rooms lie bottles still corked, pewter plates still stacked, as though the feast had only paused for breath. But the voices are gone, the songs are gone. Only the fish glide through its shattered windows now, their scales flashing like coins in the light that drips down from the world above. Atlantis and Port Royal, one a dream of paradise, the other a fever of vice. One born in the pure air of philosophy, the other in the smoke of cannon and the reek of spilled rum, yet both share the same end. Both lie cradled now in the same vast silence, their streets dark under drifting currents, their names trailing like ribbons through the foam. The Atlantic is patient. It does not choose between saints and sinners. It gathers all, folds them gently in its blue embrace, and hums the same low hymn over their bones. And so we leave them Atlantis with its impossible grace, Port Royal with its riotous heart sleeping. Side by side beneath the tide, the myth and the memory, the legend and the lesson, both reminding us that all splendor, whether carved in gold or daubed in blood, ends where the water begins. Close your eyes now. Hear it the slow breathing of the sea. Feel it the weightless hush that curls around every word, every ruin, every life. And know this, the ocean keeps what we cannot, and it whispers it back only in dreams. The ocean at the door there is a strange and quiet cruelty in the way the sea reclaims its own. It does not roar, not always. Sometimes it does not need to. It waits instead, with infinite patience, pressing closer, inch by inch, tide by tide, whispering against the edges of human ambition. The ocean is not a thief in the night. It is a lover who will not let go, no matter how firmly we say we belong to the land. Once, the stories of drowned cities belonged to myth, to memory, to the far blue past. Pavlopetri and Heracleion, Yonaguni and Atlantis. But now the ocean writes its stories in the present tense. Tonight, we will walk 3 shores, 3 places alive, with light and sound. With the laughter of children and the hum of traffic, 3 cities that know the water is rising. Venice, where beauty floats like a dream on borrowed time. Jakarta, sinking beneath the weight of its own breath. Miami, bright and brazen, smiling under a sun that hides the slow disaster curling at its feet. These are not ruins yet, but they are learning the language of the tide. Imagine, if you can, a city without streets. A city where the sky leans down to kiss its own reflection, where palaces float like painted barges, their marble skin brushed by water, the color of green glass. Venice is not a city built on land, it is a city built on longing. On the fragile courage of men who drove wooden piles into the mud and raised a dream upon the trembling edge of the lagoon. For centuries, Venice has been a miracle, a shimmer of stone and light in the arms of the Adriatic. Its canals have carried whispers of power and poetry. Its bridges have felt the footfalls of kings and beggars alike. It has endured plague and war, fire and famine, and still it blooms like a pale rose upon the tide. But beauty is rarely eternal, and the water that once cradled Venice like a lover now curls around her ankles with a colder hand. The city is sinking 2 millimeters a year, perhaps more, and the sea is rising to meet it. Once the acqua alta, the high water, came rarely, like a guest announced by distant bells. Now it comes often, uninvited, pushing over thresholds, filling piazzas until St. Mark's looks like a dream seen through tears. Scientists tell us why. The warming world, the melting ice, the restless tides, swollen by storms that grow fiercer with every year. But beneath their words, the truth is simpler, older. The sea does not forget. It remembers the land that was once its own, and it always returns. Venice fights. It raises barriers of steel and hope. The mows project great yellow gates, sleeping beneath the lagoon, waiting to rise against the surge. Perhaps they will hold, perhaps they will not. But even if they do, for how long? 50 years? 100? Time is a patient predator. And so Venice waits, listening to the slap of water against her stones, like the ticking of an unseen clock. Perhaps one day her basilicas will wear crowns of coral, her frescoes weeping color into the green gloom. Fish will drift through her arcades. Seaweed will embroider her balconies, and the gondolas will glide no more. For now, she is still alive, still radiant, still singing her soft hymn of survival. But if you walk her streets, those narrow ribbons of sun and shadow, you may feel it, the hush of something holding its breath, the sense that the sea is already inside the walls, curled like a secret at the heart of the dream. If Venice is a drowning swan, graceful even in its struggle, Jakarta is a leviathan vest, heaving, gasping for air. This is a city of more than 30 million souls, a sprawl of glass and tin and tangled wires, where towers claw at a sky smudged with smoke and rain. But beneath its restless pulse, Jakarta is sinking, faster than any major city on Earth. Some parts drop by 20 centimeters a year, the ground folding like paper under invisible fingers. Why? Because the city drinks too deeply of its own veins. Water drawn from aquifers, drained and drained until the earth caves inward, till the foundations tilt and crack. And above this slow collapse, the sea climbs steadily higher, licking at the northern edges of the city like a tongue of steel-blue flame. Each monsoon brings floods that roll through streets like armies, swelling into houses, swallowing markets. People wade waist-deep, their faces calm, almost resigned. For them, the flood is not disaster, Is rhythm, a season, as certain as the turning of the year. But there is a difference now. The water no longer leaves when the rains are gone. It lingers, curls in low places, clings to the bones of the city like a lover who will not go. Dikes rise, sea walls gleam like silver scars along the coast, but they too sink, settling into the soft, exhausted ground. Jakarta has made a choice, perhaps the only one left. The capital will move, fleeing north to the island of Borneo, as though a king abandoning a throne too heavy to bear. But what of the millions who remain? The fishermen whose nets tangle with plastic instead of fish? The children who wade to school through brown torrents that smell of rust and salt? They will live as they always have, with their feet in the water and their eyes on the sky. One day, perhaps, the city will break apart like a raft unbound, its fragments drifting into the Java Sea, not with a roar, but with a long sigh, as though it had been holding this breath for centuries. Now, let us cross the world again to a coast lined with palms that tremble in a wind soft as silk. Miami, the name tastes of heat, of light, of turquoise shallows, curled like glass around white crescents of sand. It is a city that glitters, all steel and sun and shimmering promise, a city that dances as though the music will never end. But listen closely. Beneath the throb of nightlife, beneath the hum of traffic and the crash of waves, there is another rhythm, the slow, implacable pulse of the sea. Miami does not sink as Jakarta does. It simply waits, poised on the knife edge. A fate built upon porous limestone that drinks the ocean as a sponge drinks rain. The tides creep higher, inch by inch, sliding under doors, bubbling through drains, flooding streets, not with rain, but with seawater rising from below. They call it sunny day flooding, a phrase as bright and cruel as a blade. Imagine it, the sun blazing overhead, the sky a flawless sheet of blue and water pooling at your feet, clear as glass, carrying the taste of salt and the whisper of a future no one wants to name. Developers build higher. Pumps throb like iron hearts beneath the ground. But the ocean does not bargain. It does not tire. It has no need to hurry. Miami's towers gleam like spears of silver, but in their shadows, the tide is patient. What will become of it? Will the causeways become causeways no more, but strings of broken teeth under a turquoise shroud? Will the Art Deco facades bloom with algae, their pastel dreams dissolving into the green? Will yachts drift through the ghost of Ocean Drive, their reflections wavering like broken glass?
Perhaps.
Or perhaps the city will rise on stilts, build walls high as cliffs, conjure miracles of steel and sand. But even miracles cannot outrun eternity. Venice, Jakarta, Miami, 3 cities. 3 futures folding into one. Each a stanza in the long poem of the tide. Each a reminder that all our empires, all our splendor, all our certainties, are written not in stone, but in sand. The ocean has time. Time to climb the stairs of St. Mark's. Time to finger the roots of Jakarta's slums. Time to polish the bright bones of Miami's towers until they gleam like shells on a drowned shore. Perhaps, centuries from now, divers will glide through the hushed palaces of Venice, their beams catching frescoes blurred like tears. Perhaps fish will thread through the steel skeletons of Miami, scales flashing in the green light where sunlight once burned. Perhaps Jakarta will lie spread across the silt like a fallen constellation, its fragments jeweled with coral, its mosques blooming with anemones. And those who come after, what will they say? Will they call these cities myths as we call Atlantis? Will they whisper of their fall as we whisper of Heracleion and Pavla Petri? Or will they not whisper at all, for the ocean will have taken even their names? For now, they live. For now, the lights burn, the voices rise, the wheels turn. But the sea waits at the door, and the door is opening. So close your eyes. Hear it, the breathing of the tide, steady as sleep, soft as silk. Feel it, the slow swell, the hush of water brushing at the edges of your thoughts. And dream, while the cities dream, with you dream of towers and domes, of markets and music, of all that was and all that will be, folding into blue dot. For in the end, the ocean does not rage. It does not rush. It simply remembers. And what it remembers, it takes back, gently, like a mother gathering her children home. There is a silence at the edge of the world, a hush that gathers where sea meets sky, where tides turn and clouds drift low like bruised silk. If you stand there long enough, you can feel it, a slow, deep breath pulling at the bones of the earth. The ocean is rising not with fury, not with haste, but with a patience that mocks the fever of human time. We were warned. Not in whispers, but in voices loud as storms, in numbers etched upon whiteboards, in graphs that climbed like black ladders toward a roofless sky. 2 degrees, they said. 3. A world tilted by heat. Seas swollen by the melting of giants, the Greenland shield, the white crown of Antarctica. The numbers are cold, and the truth they carry burns too hot for the mind to hold, so we dream instead. We dream that walls will save us, that machines will drink the sky of its excess carbon, that somehow, in some shimmering hour, we will turn back the tide. But the ocean does not dream. It only remembers, and it remembers everything. Tonight, let us walk the future, those drowned boulevards, those glittering towers dimmed beneath the green. Let us breathe with the cities that do not yet exist, except as shadows upon the blue. Imagine the map as a skin stretched tight upon the bones of the world. Now imagine that skin loosening, sagging under the weight of water, until the lines blur and run like ink in the rain. This is the first truth. The coasts will not stay where they are. Asterisk. By the year 2100, less than a lifetime, the sea may rise a meter, perhaps more. A meter sounds small, like the depth of a child's wading pool. But what is a meter when it unthreads? The stitches of a continent? When it slides across the deltas, where rivers flower into green abundance, drowning the roots of rice and wheat? When it fingers the foundations of cities, toppling towers as gently as a hand brushing sandcastles? From the shore, Bangladesh will bleed salt into its veins. The Mekong will swallow its own orchards. The Nile will carry the taste of brine where once it bore the gift of silt. And the cities, oh, the cities. New York will feel the tide curling at its ankles, the Hudson breathing in strange rhythm with the moon. Shanghai will watch its glass spears blur beneath the rain as the East China Sea whispers at its gates. Lagos will gleam like a drowned jewel in the hot green water of the Gulf of Guinea. And yet, these are only the edges of the story. For the sea does not stop when it tastes the first sweetness of the shore. It climbs. Always. It climbs, close your eyes. Drift forward not a century, but 5. It's not 500 years, but 5,000. The calendar dissolves. The ice is gone. The poles lie bare as bone. The sea has risen not by meters, but by mountains 70, 80 meters higher than the day you were born. Now see it. Paris is a reef. The Eiffel Tower spears upward. Like a black mast from the green, its iron bones crusted with coral, its silhouette softened by clouds of silver fish. London sleeps beneath the North Sea, its palaces pillowed in silt, its cathedrals dreaming in the dark, while kelp gardens uncoil through the aisles of Westminster like green banners in an endless tide. New York is an archipelago, its tallest, towers rising like black teeth from a glassy sea. While sharks glide in the canyons of Wall Street and octopuses bloom in the husks of subway cars, and somewhere, perhaps a diver drifts through the drowned shell of a museum. Her light brushing the hollow eyes of marble gods, the canvases bloomed to nothingness. The names of empires gnawed smooth by time. It is beautiful, its way of beauty that humbles, that aches. For the ocean does not ruin, it transforms. It does not kill, reclaims. We speak often of saving cities as though cities were prayers, and we their priests, and perhaps they are, for already the architects of the future draw lines against. The tide, they dream of floating worlds, great rafts of steel and glass, blooming like lilies upon the blue. They dream of cities that rise like towers from the deep, tethered to the seabed with cables of carbon and hope in the Maldives. They sketch rings of villas drifting upon turquoise lagoons, bright as coins scattered on the tide. In the Netherlands, they build houses that rise and fall like lungs with the breath of the flood. But for every dream that floats, there is another that sinks whole nations with names sweet as songs. Tuvalu, Kiribati, the Marshall Islands. Places where the horizon has always been a straight blue line and now bends inward like the lip of a bowl filling with water. Where will their children go? What language will the waves speak when they close over the graves of ancestors? When the last palm leans its shadow upon the green glass of the sea. Perhaps we will build arcs. Perhaps we will carry cities into the clouds, lifting streets and spires on engines that hum like bees. Or perhaps we will do nothing, and the sea will write its own scripture in the bones of what we leave behind. Warnings are not in the future. They are here now, whispering in the flooded streets of Miami, in the drowned rice fields of Bengal, in the salt that curls like frost upon the roots of crops in Senegal. They are written in the coral bleaching white as bone, in the storms that tear roofs like paper from houses, in the tides that creep higher each year, like the hands of a thief around the throat of the shore. And still, we live as though time were, a river flowing endlessly forward, as though the ocean were a mirror and not a mouth. We build towers on sand, walls against the wind, streams of permanence in a world that knows no stillness. But the sea is patient. It does not argue, it does not plead, simply waits and rises. Do you remember the beginning, the slow drowning of time, the tides breathing like the lungs of the earth? We have walked far since then, through the ruins of Pavlopetri, through the green hush of Heracleion, through the jagged silence of Yonaguni and the legends of Atlantis. We have lingered in the streets of Venice as the water curled over the stones. We have waded through the monsoon murk of Jakarta, stood on the sunlit boulevards of Miami, where saltwater pools like a mirror of fate, and now we stand at the edge of tomorrow, where the sky leans down and kisses the darkening blue, where the future hums in the hollow of the tide. Close your eyes. Here at the sea, speaking in a voice older than language, softer than sleep, I was here before you, and I will be here when your names are only bubbles in the silt. There is no anger in that voice, no malice, only truth.
Mommy.
The truth that we are guests, not owners, that all our maps are illusions, and all our borders written in water. So dream, if you must, of walls and ships, of cities that float like lilies, of towers that pierce the clouds. Dream, while the ocean dreams too, of coral palaces, fish gliding through the arches of cathedrals, a light rippling like silk over marble, drowned in green dot. And when you wake, remember this: the tide is not a thing to fear, but a thing to understand. For it carries the memory of everything: the first wave, the first rain, the first river curling like a silver thread through the dark. And in the end, when all our stories have sunk to the floor of the sea, when the last light flickers and fades, the water will go on breathing, slow and deep, like sleep itself. For the ocean does not end, and what it takes, it keeps not in darkness, but in a blue that is older than time and wider than forever. The night is deep now. The sea outside, if you could hear it, is breathing in long, slow tides, an ancient lullaby sung in the language of water. And here we are, you and I, at the quiet edge of this journey. We have walked so far together through time and tide, through stories sunken in, silt and futures yet unshaped. We began with a whisper before the waves, and now at last we return to that same hush, that same salt-scented air where the first drop fell and the first tide turned. Close your eyes for a moment. Note the memory of all we've seen drift through your mind like ships on a sleeping sea. Do you see them? The streets of Heracleion, glowing with lamplight beneath the blue, the marble columns swaying like kelp in the stillness. Pavlopetri, its plazas paved in sand, where fish dance like silver sparks between the bones of temples. Yonaguni steps, carved by hands or time itself, sinking into shadows no sun will ever reach. And Atlantis, the dream that does not die, though its stones were never laid upon the earth. And beyond them, Venice in her mirrored mask, Jakarta sinking like a slow prayer, Miami gleaming with salt on her skin. And farther still, the visions of tomorrow, cities like reefs, towers like black teeth piercing the green glass of the sea. We have seen them all. And now we stand once more where it began, the shore of a story that has no ending, only a tide that turns and turns again. If you listen now, you can hear it not with your ears, but with that quiet part of you that waits, patient as the deep. The ocean is speaking, has always spoken, but its words are long and slow, like light sinking through green water. It says, I was here before your cities, before your rivers wore their beds, before the first seeds split the dark soil and reached for the sun. I was here before names, before maps, before the lines you drew upon the dust. I have carried mountains in my arms and ground them down to sand. I have swallowed empires and held their bones like pearls in my blue hands. I have heard your prayers, your songs, your wars, and I have kept them, all of them, in the deep. And then the voice softens, folds itself like a wave smoothing to glass, and it says, do not fear me. I do not hate, I do not hunger. I only move as the moon moves, as the wind moves, as the breath of the earth moves. I am not an ending, only a change, a turning of the tide. When I rise, I do not rise in anger, but in memory. For I remember everything, every drop, every river, every tear. And when you are gone, I will remember you too. Not in grief, not in rage, but in blue. Endless and eternal. Feel the weight slip from your shoulders now, like stones rolling into the sea. All the fear, all the noise of the day, sinking down and down into the hush of the deep. You are light now, lighter than foam, lighter than a breath. You drift upon the tide, and the tide holds you, cradles you, carries you where the water hums. Like a dream, and in that dream, there are no clocks, no walls, no streets to flood, no names to lose. There is only the endless blue, folding and unfolding like silk beneath the sun, and you upon it, safe as a shell in the palm of the sea. Do you remember what I said so long ago now, at the very beginning? That you are safe here, that nothing will wake you, nothing will trouble the quiet of this night. It is still true, more true now than ever. The sea has gathered you in its arms, and it will not let you fall. Let the words fade now. It's like footprints filling with water on the shore. Let the images blur the drowned cities, the coral palaces, the streets where fish swim through the windows of forgotten homes. Let them sink into the dark like lanterns drifting down a black river. There is nothing more to hold, nothing more to know. Only the slow, deep breath of the tide, rocking you like a cradle. In and out, in and out. The oldest rhythm in the world, older than wind, older than sleep, older than dreams. And if, as you drift, you hear the ocean one last time, listen close, for it will say only this: rest now. The tide is turning, and I will carry you. Through the dark, through the quiet, through the long blue hush, where all things circle back to where they began. Sleep now, and be easy, for I am here. And I have always been here. And with that, the voice is gone, and there is only the sea. And the sea is only silence, and the silence is only sleep.